What's going on, guys? Andrew Piluk Hockey here, back with another video. As you can see by the title, I'm going to be talking about why the Leafs are not in cap hell. Oh my god, everybody's freaking out. Yes, they are. Look at their contracts. Look at the guys that they have to sign in the coming years. Did we not just get over this? Did we not just get over the we can, we will era? Guys, it's still going on. People are still talking about the Toronto Maple Leafs being in trouble when it comes to their cap. Now, I'm going to look at both sides here, and I'm going to be fair. We're going to be looking at cap-friendly for a lot of this video, but a lot of this stuff is just common sense that I'm sure a lot of Leaf fans have to agree with. And fans outside of the Leafs, outside of Leafs Nation, I guess, might disagree. But let me just talk to you for a second if you disagree that the Leafs are in cap hell. Now, I can see where you're coming from. The Leafs don't have a lot of cap space, if any. They have to use the LTIR, and you know, there's some contracts that people would say are a little bit overpaid. Now, if we're looking at the Toronto Maple Leafs roster right now on cap friendly, if we look at the forwards who are getting paid this year, tell me on this page what player here is a concern with their contract. Austin Matthews, was he overpaid a little bit? Sure, but he's Austin Matthews, a guy who can go out there and score 40 to 45 goals for you. So don't really have a problem paying that much for a guy like that. John Tavares, $11 million, was offered $13 million a season by the San Jose Sharks. Pretty sure I'm okay with paying him $11 million after his, almost 50-goal season last year. Pretty good player. I'm not too mad about paying him that much. Mitch Marner, the new contract, 10.8. Definitely an overpayment, but he's Mitch Marner, a guy who might hit 100 points next year and had over 90 this year. Then you look at William Nylander, 6.9. A lot of people didn't like that contract. Bet you that's going to be a sweetheart contract this year when he has 70-plus points. A lot of people forget that William Nylander has two 60-point seasons under his belt already, and when you come in cold halfway through a season, it's not fun. And this is by no means no disrespect to anybody, but until you've played the game and gone through something like this before, I'm pretty sure you shouldn't talk about somebody coming in halfway through a season and not being able to perform. William Nylander is going to be fine. There's a lot more than just stepping on the ice and putting pucks in the net. William Nylander has to prepare better this year, and he will. And he's going to have over 70 points, and that contract's going to be a steal. Look at some of the deals that have been signed around the league lately. I'm okay with paying William Nylander that much. Kerfoot at 3.5. Third-line centerman, pretty solid contract for a guy who came in with Tyson Barrie. He's going to look great this year. That's not a bad contract at all. Andreas Johnsson, 20-goal scorer, might have 20 or more this year. I think that he's going to be real good. $3.4 million, not a problem for him. Kasperi Kapanen, same thing. 20-goal scorer, looks like he's going to continue to improve. $3.2 million, not a problem. Then you get into Mikheyev, $925 ELC contract, one-year deal, nothing to worry about. Same thing with Trevor Moore, looks like he's going to be real good, speedy young player. Nicholas Patan, again, very little. Nick Shore, just a guy you bring in. Kenny Agostino, another guy that you're just bringing in. Jason Spezza for the league min, pretty much. $700,000 for a guy who might score 10 to 15 goals this year. Not a problem. Looking at the defense, Morgan Riley, $5 million. Pretty sure that's a steal. 4.5 for Cody Ceci, probably the worst contract here. But again, that's the first one that we've had a problem with. Jake Muzzin at $4 million, not a problem. 2.7 for Tyson Barrie seems pretty amazing to me, and that's because of Colorado taking on salary. Then you got Ben Harper, who I'm not a big fan of, but that's a cheap deal. Jordan Smoltz, cheap deal. Mark Marinson, cheap deal. Justin Hall. Basically, people don't even know he exists, but he's actually pretty decent, and that's a cheap deal. You're looking at the goaltending. Freddie Anderson, $5 million, not a problem. Michael Hutchinson, $700,000, not a problem. Then you go to their IR. Nathan Horton's never playing again. I have no disrespect towards him. I have respect for him, but obviously his career's over. But that contract would have been bad if he was playing because he started to slow down a little bit. But again, I wish him the best, and I hope that he's doing well. Same thing with David Clarkson. So those contracts are an LTIR, so the Leafs are not, like, those contracts almost don't exist. Zach Hyman and Travis Dermott, when they come back, two really good contracts for two pretty good players. You go to retain salary, 1.2 for Phil Kessel. This is the other minor problem for the Leafs roster. But again, this is basically nothing. Mikhail Grabovski, buyout history, $0, nothing too crazy there. But this is my point. There's not a ton of problems on this roster. You're not overpaying somebody who's not good at all. The Nikita Zaitsev contract that was $4.5 million for an extended period of time was a problem. That was traded for a one-year problem in Cody Ceci. You had the Patrick Marleau contract that definitely was not going to be good for the Leafs this year at over $6 million. That was traded away, sacrificed for a draft pick, but the Leafs are trying to win, so you have to get rid of that contract by attaching something good to it. The Leafs have gotten away from their big problems. Connor Brown, a guy who might have played on the fourth line this year, was getting paid over $2 million. He's not a bad player, but the Leafs couldn't afford to pay him that much to play there, so he was gone in that Ottawa trade as well. The Leafs don't have any massive problems here, guys. People are like, oh, but what about next year? The Leafs have so many contracts to sign. They've got Mikheyev as an RFA. If they want to keep him, he can stay. That'll be a cheap deal. Trevor Moore's going to still be there. Patan's going to still be there. Kapanen, Janssen, Kerfoot, Nylander, Matthews, Marner, Tavares, they're all still going to be there. So the Leafs' top 9 is essentially going to be in place, and then that fourth line can be filled in with cheap guys again. That's not going to be an issue. The Leafs, literally, their top 9 is locked in. They don't have any forwards to worry about next year. All they have is placeholders, and people are forgetting about guys in the minors. Marchment, Bracco, Timashov, you still got Freddie the Goat. Guys, the Leafs have a ton of options. And keep in mind, they can keep looking for cheap young guys that they can slide into that role, or veterans on cheap contracts like Spezza. So they won't have any problems on the forward. Oh, but their blue line's a big issue. They have all these problems. Well, next year's projected cap space is around $15 million. So if the cap goes up, let's just say, to be fair, with some of the contracts that they sign, that the Leafs have around $11 to $12 million to spend on their blue line. Okay, so and this is this right now is the projected cap hit, the upper limit is 81.5. So if it goes up to around 83, which is something that downtown Stephen Brown and I talked about, the Leafs will have a couple extra million, which would give them around 17 million. But let's just be fair and say the Leafs have like 12 million to spend on their blue line. Next year, Morgan Riley is still going to be on that blue line. Then you decide if you want to keep Muzzin or Barrie. I'm guessing they're going to try to keep Tyson Barrie, but you can side Jake Muzzin. Muzzin will be much cheaper. Barrie will be really expensive. People are also forgetting that the Leafs can bring up Timothy Liljegren and Rasmus Sandin, who both might make the roster this year. Those are two very inexpensive, cheap deals. So then right away, and you're obviously re-signing Dermott, and that will likely be a bridge contract that will be cheaper than the McAvoy contract that we've seen. Like, why would Dermott come in asking for more than Charlie McAvoy? That's not going to happen, and he just signed at 4.9. So you're probably getting a cheap bridge deal for Dermott done, like a 2-year deal, maybe 3. And if it's a 2-year deal, that could be as low as like $3 million, probably less than that. So you can next year hypothetically have one of Tyson Barrie or Jake Muzzin. You'll have Morgan Riley, you'll have Rasmus Sandin, you'll have Timothy Liljegren, and you'll have Timothy Liljegren, Sandin, Riley, and one of Barrie or Muzzin. You'll have Dermott, and then you can slide in veteran contracts or other young guys that you find, or guys from the Marlies. The Leafs are not in trouble. I don't see how the Leafs are in trouble when you're paying good players. Now, yes, they're tight to the cap. They literally don't have any space right now. But they have everybody in place. They have amazing players up front that they're paying. They have good depth players, and they still have good players that can slide into roster spots at the bottom of your lineup. The Leafs want to give the good players those big minutes so you don't have to rely on those guys at the bottom of the lineup. Their blue line next summer will be tricky, but like I said, the Leafs are going to be working now and looking in ways to improve. If that means they have to trade a Janssen or a Kapanen to slide another forward in there to clear up some space for a blue liner, I personally wouldn't do that, but they can do that. Teams would be willing to get a guy like that for a defenseman, or a young defenseman that will cost nothing, basically, under $1 million if they're on an ELC. I personally wouldn't do that, but you can do that. The Leafs don't have any terrible contracts. They're working with a lot. Marner got more than he probably should have. Matthews got a little more than he probably should have. I still argue that the Nylander deal is good, but if it makes you happy, maybe he got a little bit more than he should have, if that's what you think. But if you're paying your good players the big amount of your cap, and you still have good depth that are also on pretty good long-term contracts that you don't have to worry about for a little bit, the window's open. The Leafs are trying to win now. And again, I don't want to call out any other teams, but there's teams around the league that have a lot of money wrapped up into bad players. You know, one of the biggest arguments yesterday, wow, McDavid and Draisaitl are locked into better deals than what the Leafs have for, you know, Matthews and Marner and Tavares, whoever. Okay, but who after that do the Oilers have that's helping them get to the playoffs? Because last time I checked, they're not a playoff team. Oh, but look at a couple years ago when they won a round. Guys, I love the Oilers. I watch the Oilers quite frequently, and I'm excited for this season regardless of what happens. I love Draisaitl. I love McDavid. I love Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. They have a lot of guys on that team that I'm excited about. But they have a lot of money locked into players who aren't good. That's just how it is. Oh, they just made the swap for James Neal. They got rid of Lucic. I hope Neal works out. I really do. But if it doesn't, that's a terrible contract. Like, they have a lot of bad deals on that team. And look at their starting goaltender, Mikko Koskinen. That contract's good? I don't think so. That Russell contract is more than I would pay him. Larson hasn't exactly panned out to the way they want him to after that big trade. They have a lot of money wrapped into a lot of guys that aren't doing anything for them. Whereas if you look at the Leafs, they have depth players like Kapanen and Johnsson that are proving that they're worth contracts. Kerfoot is going to be great. Barry is on a cheap deal because of the salary retained. And there's other teams around the league, like I said, like that are tight to the cap that they're not doing anything. They're not even making the playoffs. And people are worried about the Leafs? Guys, tone it down. The Leafs are not in cap hell. They're fine. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you're new, make sure to subscribe. I'd love to have more hockey conversations with you. Join the squad. Let's get to 7,000 subscribers. I talk about all NHL teams, not just the Leafs, so make sure to check out all my other videos. And I'll see you in the next video or stream. Peace.